Hello everyone, good afternoon. I know it's difficult to keep your eyes open after lunch. We'll try our best that you don't sleep. And the topic is something which I think is at least close to my heart. And I hope we actually will do justice to the topic. And I have a very talented panel with me here, and they're already introduced. So I think this tech BPM and the technical levers which we apply in the BPM to transform our businesses, how are organizations leveraging some of these techniques and tools to actually transform the businesses? Primarily from three perspectives. One obviously is people, which is the most important angle. And then obviously the tech part of that, that what kind of technology is being applied to transform the businesses. And third obviously is that what is the future of the technology? Considering the way things are kind of running and rapidly changing, all of us who are sitting in this room are using WhatsApp. I'm sure everybody is using WhatsApp. And if you are using WhatsApp, you already are transformed, because if you open your WhatsApp and go to the search bar in WhatsApp, you are already using a large language model, which is Llama 3.2. So which means that we already are using the large language model, Gen AI, whether we like it or not, but we actually are having that tech transformation, Gen AI in our pockets. And knowingly, unknowingly, whatever we are putting in WhatsApp, whatever we're putting in some of the apps, that is being transmitted to these large language models, and those are getting trained. So I will actually start my discussion with Manish, who actually heads the software engineering and software delivery at Concentric. So Manish, what do you think, how does these levers will transform the BPM industry? I know BPM typically is where we actually transform our business processes, but software engineering plays a very vital role, because whatever we do from transformation, at the end of the day, it's a piece of software which transforms. So what is your point of view in terms of these tech levers applied on BPM from software engineering perspective?
Hello. Okay. Deepak, thank you, and thanks for having me here. And it's a pleasure to be with the esteemed panelists over here. In BPM as well as in software industry, software engineering, if you see, I believe that India is fairly evolved and fairly mature in adopting some of these technologies as well as utilizing them. So some of the technologies that come to my mind, which are very common both in the BPM as well as on the software engineering side, are process mining. You talk of RPA and hyper automation. You talk about AI, and when I say AI, I'm talking of AI, I'm talking of machine learning, and then I'm also talking about Gen AI. So we as a nation have been utilizing this to our fullest. Now, if I take a deep dive in all of this to tell you how these three technologies or these multiple technologies come together and create an impact in the market. So let's start with the process mining, right? Whether again in the BPM or in the software engineering, we look at the event logs generated by the IT systems, to create a process flow diagram. It's a visualization of the entire process. And the intent is to identify what are the gaps, where are the deviations, if any. Are there any, gaps that need to be fixed? Is there a compliance issue that needs to be fixed? So these are some of the things that we use process mining for. Now, we all know that there are some really world-class organizations who have state-of-the-art tools, state-of-the-art products, which help the business process management from a process mining. But if you look at the software engineering side, especially where you have DevOps coming in and continuous integration, continuous delivery, or deployment, CI/CD that we're talking about, we now use plugins like, there is Blue Ocean, which sits onto your Jenkins and tells you what is the entire software product flow. And this is something that really helps us in terms of identifying, okay, this is a problem area, and this is the area that we need to fix. So that's one. The second one is the RPA and the hyper automation. So RPA, my belief is any task which is repetitive and which is rule driven can be executed by bots. So keeping that in mind, you put an AI intelligence on top of it. It takes your bot to another level altogether, which is what we call as hyper automation, right? And this is where we bring in hyper-automation to ensure that wherever there is critical decision-making that is needed, or wherever there is intelligence that is needed for the bot, hyper-automation plays a critical role on that. Though from a software engineering perspective, I have to be honest, I've not seen any compelling business use case for an RPA or for an hyper-automation. But as far as business process management is concerned, that's we are seeing a big impact. Now, the third and the most important one is, of course, and I think everyone's been hearing about, is AI, Gen AI, machine learning, right? And BPM, again, we use it for predictive analytics. We use it for, again, getting information in terms of what an agent is doing, how do we reduce overall time and stuff. But purely from a software engineering perspective, we started using, and we've started some very, very powerful use cases of code generation, of code optimization, of query optimization, of cases where we need to write code comments, code documents, understanding user requirements and converting that into at least the first gen or the first level of code. This code is not absolutely accurate at this stage, but there is a human intervention involved, and then we take it to the next step. So test cases for that matter, or test data creation. So if you see all these technologies, whether it is RPA, whether it is process mining, or whether it is AI, when you bring them together, there's a lot of synergies which impacts the industry overall in terms of increasing productivity, reduction of costs, increasing efficiency, and from a software engineering perspective, ensuring that there is a faster time to market for launching of features or products.
Perfect. Thanks, Manish. So Manit, coming on to you, you being the India head of iQor, close to the business people. So in your opinion, what is the role of ethical AI when it comes to deployment of some of these AI solutions along with hyperautomation, and when we deploy this at scale? So how does the ethical part of the AI plays the role in this entire life cycle?
Good evening, good afternoon, everyone. Well, ethical AI and ethical side of RPA, as we all understand, job displacement, I think, is one of the biggest challenges that we have. Is this better? Okay. Yeah. So if we talk about the challenges that RPA and automation pose to the overall BPO BPM industry, is mostly around the job displacements. The first fear that comes to the minds of our agents is, will I lose my job if we introduce AI or if we introduce RPA? But I think over the years, as the technology has advanced and as we all understand, AI and RPA are not here to replace people. They are here to assist people. It is very easy to get overexcited about automations and about RPA. But I think the whole game is, we will probably win this game if we all start slow, think big, and also scale responsibly. I think that is going to be the key, and that is what has been driving our AI initiatives at iQor. One of the biggest things that I think one needs to look at when we say, the ethical use of AI is making sure that data privacy is at the heart of it. Data privacy and data protection. All of the data that we have access to is either third party or belongs to our own employees. We have to ensure that the AI model that we are training or the RPA that we are doing has access to only the absolute necessary data. We should not expose our entire data set to all of our AI models without knowing what is going to be the end use of it. There also has to be a constant ethical initiative of auditing all of our AI products and tools and the applications that have access to it. The audit model or the compliance team should comprise of a diverse set of individuals. It should not just be people from technology. It should also encourage, we should also encourage people from business to be a part of it. people from our DEI communities to be a part of it, people that actually work with data analytics to be a part of it. So it should not be just a software engineering or a data engineering initiative. If we want to build an ethical platform, it has to have partnership from all of these diverse verticals across the board. We should also consider, something called the algorithmic bias. How many of you here have heard of the algorithmic bias? Anybody who works with, there's cognitive bias, of course, which most of us are already privy to. But of late, people that are in the BPO sector doing a lot of annotations and labeling work, there is something called a labeling bias that has also been injected by the AI tools and models. A lot of historical bias has also come into play. So essentially, we have to look at the data set that we are plugging into the AI platform. If we feed our AI models historical data, it is bound to give us historical outputs. But is that something that you are looking at? Is that something that you want as an output? So I think when we say ethical use of AI, all of these things will play a key role. They are playing it today, but I think the whole, I would say, end result of it is going to be that AI and RPA should not be our masters. They should be here to assist us. They should not be here to control us. So we don't know eventually at the end of it where all of us will end up with this uncontrollable AI automation mode that is going on.
Perfect. Thanks, Maneet. Your key message is human in the loop is always going to stay, irrespective of where we head in this technology transformation. So, Nitin, just over to you. I know hyperautomation or RPA or process mining, it has been in the industry, in the businesses transforming for so long. Now with evolution of AI, what is your perspective and what is your thought process that when we integrate AI with or on top of an RPA or a process mining, how does it impact the overall technology landscape and architecture side of things? Because obviously, when you bring AI models on top of something which is already existing, and to make coexistence of a new technology, the architecture definitely needs some revamp. So what is your point of view on the architecture side of things?
Good afternoon, everyone. So if we look at RPA and how we used to do the process mining in the past, it is more people-driven, which means you're talking to the different business units, you are mapping their process, how they are currently working. But that used to take always a longer time. Now, if you look at some of the event data which is coming up from different systems and digest data as a part of the Gen AI or the traditional AI model, it will predict, it will automate the process of mining and defining the process to start with. And then obviously, then some of the hard work which needs to be done by talking to different people can be easy by leveraging the AI in that space. Now, once you define the process, you might need to reimagine the process. You might need to bring efficiencies. Then you can submit the initial draft of the process to the AI engines that will predict, that will also suggest the changes which are required in the process. Then when you are operating with a RPA process, then you may want to monitor it. You may want to look at how you can bring the further optimization in that process, for how you can do the real-time monitoring, how would you analyze the different logs which are coming out of the process. And then you optimize the overall process in terms of scalability, extensibility, and plug in some of the AI models there. So if you take the example of a typical ML, whether it's supervised, unsupervised, or reinforcement learning, if you take an example of claim processing, if you build a model which can detect the fraud based on the historical data, and you plug it with the RPA processing, possibly your claim processing would become more intelligent in it. Secondly, if you look at some of the cognitive process where you have multiple images coming from the different properties, you want to do the risk analysis. If you have the AI in the picture, then some of the human work can be offload it to AI. AI can predict, AI can generate some of the intelligence, and obviously the underwriters can look at from different angle there. But they will become, like the AI will become the assistive technology for all the underwriters and everyone. If you move further, look at the NLP process. There are lot many emails which comes in, especially in the operations side. The email says the document. Some of the documents are handwritten. So that's where the cognitive side of the AI will help in terms of detecting, extraction, and build some intelligence available for the agents to work upon it, right? And if I look at the architecture, I look at the data side of the things, where you have the shared data across the organization, across the processes, which are leveraged or become making your RPA process intelligent. Then you need to look at the scalability. So today you are processing, let's say, 1,000 transactions per minute via single or multiple bots. Tomorrow, if it scaled up to 2,000, how your processes will work. The third part is if you need to expand or extend your current RPA process, there should be a possibility to extend it to new features. And that's where, again, you may have the traditional AI models, the Gen AI models, or any models which you maybe build in-house. So definitely, overall, it is bringing the optimization, more intelligence in the RPA process, both from the process mining perspective as well as the actual implementation perspective.
So, sorry, you have to be a little closer to the mic and a little loud because they're not able to interpret it. Oh, okay. Please, thank you.
Soumya, coming over to you, I know you are more close to the business operations and working closely with clients, working closely with a lot of workforce. So how do you see this disruption of AI, RPA, and process mining coming together? So one obviously is, and Mani did touch upon that, the job displacement fear. When we try to transform a business process, the workforce on the floor thinks that our jobs are going to go away. And then that leads to one of the biggest reasons for transformation failures is this fear, because it does not actually help execute change management in the proper way. So in your opinion, how important it is to plan for this change management when we deploy these solutions and deploy at scale?
So it's a great question. Are you guys able to hear me? Perfect. So quick post-lunch survey. How many of you think there is a real threat of a complete job takeaway through AI, RPA? Can I see a raise of hands? 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, we have our jobs back. There is a common conscious of, at least larger common conscious of, there is human job left. Now to your question, I'll kind of answer it in 2 parts. What we believe, what is happening with the workforce as we stand today, and then the second part, how we can effectively do the change management. On the augmentation versus displacement debate, it's been going on for at least 2 years once we have OpenAI come up with their GPT model. What we believe that there would be some part of the job which would be more of a digital assistance in higher degree to whatever possible to the workforce. What it means is when we kind of looked at our own workforce surveyed, we realized 40 to 50% of our workforce really struggle to get the information needed to perform their job. And that is where AI would bring the largest benefit in immediate future. Then the second part is where we believe AI can bring a lot of value is essentially bringing the historical data of customer, of historical transaction, and bring it to the hyper-personalization for a particular customer, which would be far more accurate, meaningful. Instead of a standard operating process, those would be really targeted problem solving. And the third area where we see AI could really bring, AI, RPA or process mining could bring productivity benefit through automation of repeating less complex tasks. Now the question is, what would be left to us? The first and foremost would be complex problem solving, which is not being able to tackle completely through technology. The second aspect would be emotional intelligence, where you need empathy, where you need multi-intent customer problem identification, where, while customer come to you with one particular issue, but there are layered issue which, otherwise technology failed to understand. And also ethical decision making. Many a times your hardcore binary technology driven mindset would say this way or that way or black and white, but in a real pragmatic world, you still need empathy, you still need a customer obsession to stay on the business. So these are the three areas where we believe it will kind of stay. From a change management perspective, our submission is, there has to be a strong communication to the frontline employees so that they are part of those change. While, technology can solve most of it, but there still would be some part of the human, and how effectively they use those technology, that is the key for any success. And then we also have to look for hypercare period. And many a times, all this AI budget opening with our clients, we attempt to, solve for certain things which kind of, have a very short lifespan of failure or success kind of level to it. I believe we need to be a little patient as well as put hypercare on those projects so that it stays, it kind of stays hand in hand with a human and technology collaboration. So those are my thoughts around the question, Deepak.
Perfect, sounds good, Soumya. And I can relate to what you said about hypercare, because we at EXL have a contact center solution, which is AI-driven, which we call as Smart Agent Assist. So when we recently deployed this for one of our global UK retailer client, and we rolled this out for close to like 600 colleagues in EXL, it was a big pushback which we got. But when we actually went, sent our teams on the floor, spoke to them, gave them training, make them understood that, see, this is not going to displace you, this is going to augment you. Today, I think we are seeing the success. They love the solution, because now they're able to focus more on core customer centricity and customer experience, rather than doing those admin tasks, which is gathering information from multiple systems, etc. So you're right, hypercare absolutely is critical. Maneet, coming back to you on the same ethical AI and responsible AI. So every organization is hungry of applying AI, applying transformation, using RPA, process mining, etc., to derive potential outcomes. But we also have to ensure that we as organization leads, we also have to ensure about the responsibility and ethicity of the AI which we have to take. For example, yesterday it was in the news that 3 folks who were driving from Budaun to Bareilly using Google Maps, they actually were blindly following Google Map as a technology, and Google Map took them to a flyover which was half constructed, and the car actually fell down, and we lost 3 precious lives. So this is the role technology actually can play adversely. So we as individuals also should have some sense of responsibility in using technology. Google Map is a simple technology tool or app which we use. Everybody uses it, but it took 3 precious lives. So what is your point of view when it comes to applying in your business areas?
Well, I can speak for my organization. We have been utilizing AI for last year and a half in our recruitment practice. So we have, completely eliminated bias in the first and the second rounds of recruitment, which we are doing online. So it's a faceless sort of an interview. So it has worked in our favor. We have hired a lot of people globally using our Symphony AI, which is our trademark recruitment platform. Since we are also a global call center, we've also utilized something which is real-time agent assist, which actually works with our agents, real-time in opening up the knowledge bases and giving them, real-time solutions. So in essence, I think if your solutions, AI-driven solutions, RPA solutions are helping people on the ground real-time, I would say by all means, we should ethically and operationally back it 100%. But at the same time, we also have to ensure a lot of other things simultaneously, because if not used correctly, AI or any of these automations can pose a very big reputational risk. Like in the case of Google Maps, right? We have been talking about Google Maps in the good sense of examples all this way. However, this recent accident where 3 people have lost their lives is putting it to bad light. And in fact, it could have been any of us on that road using Google Maps and ending in that river. So I would say, we have been using it cautiously. I would advise all of the other organizations to also use it cautiously. Ensure that the data is foolproof. It should always be supervised at every step of the way by a human. So there should always be human oversight. There has to be constant compliances around it, constant audits around it. The data privacy and security has to be the key. Also, I would say transparency and the accountability for it. So I'm not sure if Google Maps has come back and given an apology, or they have taken measures to safeguard their interests, but what if, any of us, anybody who comes from the BPO side of it, gives some instructions real time to a caller during one of our CX interactions, and something like this happens. It could be threatening for not just the operations of that business, but I think overall reputationally, it would be devastating for that organization just because of this one error that probably has been posed through AI. So I think we all have to take very conscious steps as we introduce AI into our day-to-day operations. Some of it could be trivial, some of it could be, if we are talking about, let's say, healthcare. People, if they are using an AI-based knowledge base or AI-driven counseling for a healthcare client, it could be, we could end up being another Google. Who knows? So, like I said, it has to be conscious, it has to be effective, and it has to pass through several layers of compliances before it actually makes it to production. And yeah, that is my take on the ethical side of it.
Sounds good. So I think the crux is human intelligence definitely will always take precedence over whatever intelligent automation or AI we build. Otherwise, the accident would not have happened yesterday. If those 3 people were a little bit more conscious, I don't blame anybody on that, Google Maps, but I think human intelligence still remains on top of everything. So coming on to you, Manish, whenever we implement and execute these projects, the most important thing which we look, or which the clients would look, is the success metrics, success criteria, or KPIs. So in your opinion, what are those KPIs which you look for when we actually execute these AI embedded projects for automation and for process mining, whether it's in software engineering or whether you apply this in the BPM industry?
I think that's a great question, and I'll try to be as objective as I can in this, because one can spin around stories around these metrics, but the intent I'm sure that the audience is looking at over here is, what are those KPIs? How do we measure that? So I'll start with Concentrix operating philosophy. So Concentrix has an operating philosophy of 3 V's, which is visibility, velocity, and value. So anything and everything that we operate, or anything and everything that we measure, is built around the 3 V's or the operating philosophy. So from a KPI perspective, if I were to look at the visibility part of it, I'm looking at before technology intervention and after technology intervention. what is the time reduction in the process. So that's the first of it. That's something that we will start tracking, or we track. Once the time reduction parameters or the metrics has been achieved, the next thing that we look at is what are the errors that got introduced, or what were the errors that got removed with the intervention of technology. The third metrics related to visibility would be related to compliance regulations. So a great example that you shared, are we compliant with the regulatory bodies? Are we not in compliant with the regulatory bodies, especially with the intervention of technology? So these are some of the metrics that we measure purely from a visibility perspective. Now moving on to the second one, which is velocity. So velocity would mean that what is the employee productivity that we are gaining with the intervention of tech? Time to market, something that I said earlier. With the intervention of tech, how soon, how quickly, how fast can I introduce new features into the market or introduce new products into the market? Again, from a velocity perspective, I would be looking at adaptability. The market is forever changing. There is new tech coming in, which is impacting the business process management as well as the software development industry. So how quickly is my tech and my team able to adapt to that? Has the agility of my team impacted? If yes, how do we measure that? So these are some of the things that we measure from a velocity perspective. Now, visibility and velocity leads to value. So value is where we start looking at, this is the time when we reach out to our clients, we talk to them, we hear them, and we understand whether what was the impact, whether the impact was positive, negative, neutral. If so, how do we quantify it? So a CSAT plays a very important role. Having big ears plays a very important role. We are client-centric, but at the same time, we are extremely employee-centric. So it matters to us what our employees are talking about from a intervention of technology. If they have fears that they will lose their jobs, then perhaps this is a time that a certain coaching needs to be given in, certain sessions, trainings need to be given in, so that they remain relevant with the latest tech intervention. So a CSAT and ESAT, these are two major important ones. The third and perhaps one of the most important ones is the ROI. At the end of the day, from a business standpoint, am I investing in a technology? What is the return of investment that I'm getting on it? So we start tracking these three things from a value-driven perspective. So that's my response. Yeah.
Perfect. And I think one thing which I learned from your conversation is typically when we run these projects, we actually do CBA, which is cost-benefit analysis. But what you are saying is that in this CBA, the people angle also is important. So it becomes CBPA, which is cost-benefit and people analysis, because we can't just leave people behind in terms of driving ROI, in terms of generating some cost optimization. So that's fabulous.
Absolutely, Deepak. In fact, from a people perspective, what's really important also is the skill sets. So, at the end of the day, does my team have the skills to adopt to the technology and also, bring in the latest tech that's impacting the globe? So if you see, these are all actionable items. It gives the leader a very clear plan in terms of what is it that I need to do. So that really helps us.
Sounds good. So Nitin, coming on to you, I know the technology today is changing in kind of an hourly basis. Every other day, the morning we get up, we actually hear something new, that this has come up or this startup has come up. But we still have to analyze as an organization, as leaders, we have to analyze and we have to keep a track of that what exactly is coming or what will happen down the line after, let's say, 18 months. I can't even say 3 to 5 years from now. That is a long duration. So how do you see this evolving? We started from process mining. We graduated to RPA, hyperautomation. Today we are embedding AI into these solutions. What is next? Gen AI is already on the table now. So where do you see heading this entire transformation landscape in next 18 to 24 months? What is your point of view on that?
So we are still on a very initial stage of including AI, ML into the core RPA process because of the natural concerns around the data and the responsible AI. And even some of the regulations in various industries do require a human intervention or human in loop. Before that, the RPA process cannot work. So what the foremost which I would see is that inclusion of more AI and ML models built in as a part of the RPA process will be the prime trend for the new, for the next 18 or 24 months, where you will see more innovative use cases and the core models are getting injected into the RPA process. In addition to that, the hyper automation, especially with the different technologies and the data coming into the play, will become an important aspect of it. Because of the regulatory concerns, I see the RPA processes would be designed in a way that there is always a human intervention in place, minimize that, but yet have that as a part of the regulatory process. In addition to that, the user experience will become another prime area where how the RPA would give the confidence to the user that the process is doing what it is designed for, whether it's in the form of the monitoring tools or some of the insight which the RPA process is generating. In addition to that, we also see more and more data coming in a part of the RPA process where that is providing the intelligence to the model, to the overall processes and all. And if you look at the trend, whether it's UiPath, Power Automate, Blue Ocean, or any like Pega, Appian, all these platforms are either using or leveraging the current LLM or the AI models, or building the wrappers around it to have a very niche offering in the RPA process, whether it's about the process mining or process optimization, or even building the processes in the form of low-code, no-code platform. So while the low-code, no-code platform is, I would say, very hyped at this point of time in the industry, but when it comes down to RPA, it really plays an important role. So the organizations or the platforms are looking in a way that how they can enable business to become more citizen developer in that sense, right? So obviously that will bring the different challenges to the organization in terms of the governance or looking at what the different business units are doing versus aligning with the overall organization strategy, but it will definitely evolve a lot, right? And in terms of the organization readiness, what I see is that the first and foremost, how we would look at the trend of these emerging technologies and the areas and include them as a part of their roadmap. The second is the people, where how we would reskill or upskill the people to adopt some of those technologies which are emerging. The third part is that how would you foster the culture of continuous improvement and innovation bringing in the organization, because unless and until this is happening, you are not generating the values for your own processes, your own people, or to your customer.
Perfect, sounds good. I think the key message which you're trying to give is that what we are going to see in next 18, 24 months is more of self kind of service agents, and we already are hearing agentic AI a big time in the industry. So that is where I think our workforce and our ways of working are going to be. But still the human in the loop is going to exist. We are not going to displace that. Perfect. So I'm coming over to you. I know we are just on time. So we are also consumers of a lot of things, right? When I bought my car like 10 years back versus when I bought just like 6 months back, my expectations obviously were that I should see a drastic and significant improvement in the features and the way the car will be driven, some of these ADAS features, etc. Which means as a consumer, what I wanted was that I should see improvement from what I was using versus what I'm using today. But it's the same car. At the end of the day, the car will take me to from place A to place B. But I still want to see improvement. Same goes for these deployments which we do, the automation deployments, AI deployments. Once we deploy these solutions for our clients, in your opinion, what are the best practices for the ongoing continuous improvements? It's not that we deploy. It's not a send and forget API. So we deploy these, then in your opinion, how do you apply the best practices to keep on improving and improvising on those deployments further?
That's a great question. And at Teleperformance, we believe on the first principle of customer obsession, right? Whatever we are making, it's for end customer. And that should be the first and foremost governing principle for whether it's AI, whether it's RPA, whether it's process mining, or for that matter, any other technology. So we keep on looking at end customer experience as one of the key metric for us to look at that and continuously improve that. The second part you did touch upon a bit, right, which is around the entire legal framework around AI and automation is much more evolving, right? We always wanted to be on the right side of the spectrum, given that it has significant bearing on the human workforce globally in nature. And some of the Western countries are coming up with their legal framework. While they are still evolving, we really wanted to be on the right side of it while not losing the obsession for the customer experience or user experience. And really use technology for problem solving rather using it just because it's a cool thing in the market, in vogue now. Having said that, from a change management perspective, two key aspects we believe that's going to be very important. One, how you take your human workforce in this journey with you so that they become more empowered, more tech savvy, more frictionless when they're in front of client or when they're in front of any problems to face. That's number one. Second is how you ensure entire history, be it from a data standpoint, be it from an information standpoint, is being present as well as kind of looked at from a data privacy and security, which is largely sub-part of the legal framework. And third aspect is, having a faster cycle to realize your own mistakes and, redo the stuff that you have not done it right. So those are my three key takeaways from where we believe organization would be successful. Just to repeat, customer obsession, user experience, tech for problem solving, and take human with you in this journey.
Thank you, Soumya. I think that was apt answer. So I think we are done because we already have showing the time is up for us. But I think thank you so much for providing the valuable insights. And I think those were helpful, and I hope audience would have loved the questions and responses. And thank you so much for having such a good audience and not asking any questions. But I know if there are any questions, you can see my name there, and you can reach out to me LinkedIn. I actually can be reached out and send your questions to me, and I will get a response from the panel. And thank you so much.